Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads, Chapter 29 of Among the Hidden. Before Luke had a chance to move, Jen's dad had picked him up and thrust him into the closet. "There's a secret door in the back," he hissed. "Use it." Luke groped blindly, fighting for what felt like piles of hair. Behind him, he could hear Jen's dad yelling, I'm coming. There's a $12,000 door. If you break it down, you're going to pay." Then Luke heard the computer make a beep, and Jen's dad muttering, "Fine, time for them to discover efficiency. Come on, connect." The pounding on the door grew louder, and a gruff voice yelled, "You have 3 seconds, George." Luke dug deeper into the closet. He couldn't even find the back wall, let alone any secret door. Then he heard a splintering sound from the front of the house. Seconds later, there were stomping footsteps in the computer room. What is the meaning of this? It was Jen's dad's voice coming from the hall, full of outrage. If he had witnessed it himself, Luke would have guessed that Jen's dad would have been crying only moments before. He sounded too forceful, too assured, too confident that he was right and anyone who opposed him was wrong. Then the stomping stopped. From deep inside the closet, Luke could hear someone snicker. "You with your pants down, eh, George?" "Yes, very funny," Jen's father replied, not sounding the least bit amused. There was a sound that could have been a zipper being zipped. "Has it come to this? A man can't even go to the bathroom without his door being broken down by a bunch of morons with power complexes, and you will pay for the door, I assure you." If Luke had been one of the population police, Jen's dad would have scared him to pieces. Luke would have backed out, muttering, I'm sorry. He never would have believed Jen's dad was hiding a third child. Hopefully, Luke paused in his burrowing into the Talbot's closet. But the voice that answers Jen's father carried only the slightest edge of doubt. "Oh, come off it, George. You know we're entitled to search and seizure. We have reports of that computer being used for illegal purposes, just an hour and a half ago." "You're even bigger fools than I thought," Jen's dad answered. "Do any of you read your memos? I reported to Central Command this morning that I was going to continue my sting operation in the illegal chat rooms. See, I wrote, 'Where's Jen?' and 'Hello, is anybody there?' which was some lost, confused third child who missed the rally might write. Are you so low-ranking that you don't even know I was pretending to be the guerrilla leader Jen all along? Did you miss the commendation ceremony where I was rewarded for the disposal of 40 illegals?" Luke wondered what Jen's dad could say her name without giving his voice away. If Luke didn't know Jen, hadn't known her, he corrected himself with a wince. And if he didn't know how much he trusted her father, he would have been certain that Jen's father had double-crossed her. As it was said, his head swam with fear that Jen's father might betray him. How could he trust someone who spoke so coldly of the disposal of third children? Luke struggled on through the closet, searching through a stack of blankets at the back. Finally, he reached the wall, but everything felt smooth. Jen's father was there. Was a door. There had to be a door. The voices from the closet were muffled now. "See the memo? I'm sure it's on your desk back at the office with all the paperwork you never read." Jen's dad raised his voice so Luke could hear him clearly. "Or can you even read?" The population police officer ignored the insult. "Show us the computer." "Very well." Luke prayed that Jen's dad had something to show them. He could not find the door, though he ran his fingers along the wall again and again. His heart was beating so loudly he was sure the population police could hear him. All he could hear of the population police and Jen's father's mutterings. Then one officer's voice rang out. "You're lying, George. We're going to search." "Oh, just because of a computer malfunction?" "Fine. It's my problem." Luke was stunned by the indifference in Jen's father's voice. "But when you don't find anything, and you won't, you know that I'm entitled to the illegal search and seizures benefit granted to barons, and I will never press charges. Should I use the extra money on caviar or champagne?" "Aw, George, you wouldn't really sue." "You don't think so? Then go ahead. Start here." Suddenly the closet door was flooded with light. Luke stifled a gasp. How could Jen's father have flung open the door where the very place Luke was hiding? Desperately, Luke yanked a blanket over his head. None of the population police answered Jen's father, but the pattern of the shadows that fell on Luke's blanket made him think the population police were standing right in the doorway of the closet. He heard hangers scraping against a metal bar, and then the population police walked away. Confused and terrified, Luke remained huddled under the blanket. He could hear muffled footfalls elsewhere in the house, and there was certain they'd be returning to the computer room any minute. Before they killed him, he hoped they would let him go back to his parents and tell them how much they loved them. He could apologize to Matthew and Mark, too, for not appreciating checkers and card games they played when he knew they'd rather be outside. And probably he should apologize to his parents for disobeying and coming to Jen's house in the first place. Except, even scared to death of being found, he couldn't scrape up full regret for that. Anyhow, it wasn't likely they'd let him see his parents before they killed him. He'd have to protect his parents, and refused to reveal even who they were. Luke's mind was racing with frantic plans when he heard someone coming into the computer room. There was only one set of footprints, so he dared to hope. "You could have swept up the glass on your way out." It was Jen's dad. Luke strained to hear an answer, but none came. Were the population police gone? Luke kept his head down. He heard Jen's dad waiting in the closet. Then he pulled the blanket off Luke and clamped his hand over Luke's mouth. Luke started to struggle until he read the words on the piece of paper Jen's dad held in front of his face. "They're gone. You're safe. But don't talk." Luke relaxed and nodded to show he would obey. Jen's dad released him, flipping the paper over, and began writing furiously. "House bugged now." Luke gave Jen's dad a puzzled look. But he started to say, then remembered and stopped. He took a pen from Jen's dad and wrote, "Bugged? Ants? Roaches?" Jen's dad shook his head frantically. "Bugs. Little listening devices. Population police hear everything. That's why they can't talk. They do that when a bust's unsuccessful. Even left a bug on me." Jen's dad turned around and pointed, and Luke saw a small disc sticking out of his collar. Luke frowned and wrote on the paper, "Why not take it off?" Jen's dad shook his head. "Safer this way. As long as they think they hear everything, they won't come back." Jen's dad pointed to the hairy lumps on the hangers behind him. "Bribe them with fur coats. Very rare and very valuable." Luke looked at the coats. They did seem a lot fewer of them now. Were they animal skins? Why would anyone want such a thing? He couldn't ask, though, because Jen's dad was already scribbling more. "Just bought time. My goose probably cooked now. I didn't file that memo. They'll find out." Luke reached for the pen. What will they do now? Jen's dad shook his head. "Don't know," he wrote. "I'm sure this kind of thing before. But everything's chancy now. The fact they got here so fast equals they have it in for me." Weakly, Luke leaned his head back against the closet that reminded him of his frantic search along its surface. He reached for a paper and wrote, "Where's the door?" Jen's dad pulled out a new sheet of paper. Shaking his head, he wrote, "Isn't one? Just one to get you to the back of the closet." Luke buried his face in his hands. Jen's dad was such a good liar. There was no doubt about that. How could Luke trust him? Luke raised his head and watched as Jen's dad scribbled over something else on the paper. His expression was full of concern. Luke knew, somehow, that he was trustworthy. He could have easily turned Luke in and gotten praise in another combination ceremony. But how confusing to never know when someone's lying. Jen's dad turned the paper to face Luke and said, "So, want a fake ID or not?" Luke gulped. After a minute, he wrote back, "Am I safe if I don't?" Jen's dad seemed to be weighing the question. He narrowed his eyes and wrote, "Probably. They're after me now, not you. If they really thought there was an illegal here, they wouldn't have taken the bribe. Or take it and you too. But I advise, get the ID." Luke wrote back, Can't I wait? Think about it for a little while. That was what Luke wanted. Or not even to think, but to hide from thinking for a while. He wanted to remember Jen and grieve for her by himself. He didn't want to have to think about the parts of the population law were good and others were bad, or why his family didn't have more money. He didn't want to figure out Jen's dad and people like him who could pretend to be so many different things. He didn't want to decide something now that could change the rest of his life. But Jen's dad had written back, "Don't know. Maybe a case of now or never." Luke scrawled, "Why?" Jen's dad wrote back a long time. Then he turned the paper to Luke. It said, "I have power now. Tomorrow probably. Next week? Next year? Can't tell with the government. Favored lackey one day, persona non grata the next. Never know. No guarantees." Luke stared at the paper until the words blurred together. He had to decide. Now. He thought about reading and daydreaming in the attic the rest of his life. His parents were kind to him, even if they weren't around much. As much as Matthew and Mark had always teased him, he was pretty sure they would take care of him if his parents couldn't someday. His life was very limited. He understood that now more than ever. But he was used to it. It was safe. And he could make himself happy. Except, Luke remembered how bored he felt before meeting Jen. He had been desperate to do something, anything, before read and daydream. He had been so desperate that he had risked his life for the chance of meeting another third child. But if he wanted to spend the rest of his life feeling that desperate, would he just waste it? But even if he got a fake ID, what would he do? The answer was there instantly, as if he had known all of his life all along, and his brain was just waiting for him to come looking. He could do something to help third children come out of hiding. Not with another big dramatic rally like Jen had tried, or by finding fake IDs the way Jen's dad did. Maybe there was something smaller and slower he could do. Studying ways to grow more food so no one would go hungry, no matter how many kids people had. Or changing the government so that farmers were allowed to raise pigs or use hydroponics, and ordinary people, not just barons, could have better lives. Or figuring out ways for people to live in outer space, so they wouldn't be too crowded on Earth and chop down beautiful woods just for houses. He didn't know exactly how he could do those things, or even the right thing to do was, but he wanted to do something. He remembered what he had told Jen the last time he had seen her. It's people like you who change history. People like me who just let things happen to us. And he'd believed it. That was how his family had always lived. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe he would succeed where Jen had failed because he wasn't a baron. Because he didn't have her sense that the world owed him everything. He could be more patient, more cautious, and more practical. But he'd never been able to do anything besides hiding. He bit his lip. His hand shook as he wrote his answer. "I want a fake ID, please." And that is the end of chapter 29.